So Donald Trump is having an absolutely terrible week as his MAGA base is basically falling apart. Let me show you guys what's going on. Let's jump right in. So here's the headlines. The surprising issue driving a wedge between Trump and his MAGA base. And you're probably wondering, okay, so what's this issue driving the divide? It's AI. And I told you guys several times on the channel, we talk about AI. There's all these negative effects that it has on society. And then when you try to say regulate it, be it the state level, Trump before was like, yo, I'm going to sue you. And that was the recent issue. And this is getting a lot of pushback because, from the Republican sort of traditional point of view, they're just like states' rights. We can do what we want, whatever, in the states. And for the federal government to say, yo, don't do regulations on AI really pisses off a lot of people. And then on top of that, remember, Trump's whole plan here is to basically replace you with robots. And it's just not that popular. When you read through the stuff, you'll see more. So we'll read it together. It says, President Donald Trump faces an unexpected rift in the MAGA movement as Republican officials from state houses to Capitol Hill warn his full-throated embrace of the tech industry's artificial intelligence boom risks undermining America's economic security and exposing their children to new harms. So they're worried about jobs, and they're worried about any number of ways that AI can hurt kids. And there's any number of ways that you can argue about that. Also, you have to understand, why is Trump pushing this stuff? He's got a bunch of, tech bros giving him money. He's hanging out with whatever foreign countries or foreign companies that are investing in said tech bros. And basically the money's flowing. That's what it boils down to. And so Trump's like, okay, if there's any regulation that I can remove to get me more money, so be it. I'll go for it. But it may not necessarily be beneficial to the American people. So, for example, what happens to regular people if suddenly your energy rates go up or you lose your job, right? That's just not popular. And you're seeing actually pushback from people within his own party. So it's like, for example, I'll read it. But a growing cohort of Republicans, including Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, Sarah Huckabee Sanders of Arkansas, and prominent members of Congress like Josh Hawley of Missouri, argues AI breakneck growth could undermine the party's populist appeal, right? So Trump's trying to say, I'm for the regular people, yet Trump's also basically hanging out with the bros and building his ballrooms and saying, I'm for AI. But it doesn't match up. And I've been telling you guys this all along, when Trump's whole plan is, hey guys, we're all going to get rich from tariffs, from crypto, and from AI. How's that going to benefit the regular person? It's not. That's the point. It's not. And it's interesting that suddenly the Republicans are now figuring it out, or they could be looking at Trump's poll numbers and like, well, there's no reason to tie my name to Trump anymore. Or they could be like, you know what? Trump's getting old. He's on his way out. We're going to lose the midterms. I'm just going on to the next election cycle. And I think you're starting to see more pushback. And also, too, just reality, MAGA people, they may have their challenges in life in terms of, catching up to reality. But this kind of stuff, I think they're starting to really figure it out, because this is just regular people talk. Listen to what it says. Okay, some have called for regulation, right? So meaning that Republicans, or it doesn't have to be Republicans, anyone at the state level is like, you know what, we got to regulate this AI stuff, right? So here's some examples. Some have called for regulation to protect Americans against job losses by automation. And I've told you guys about this before, say something like the Longshoremen Union, right? Where essentially, they go on strike and they say, basically, we're not going to go back to work if you're going to replace us all with robots. And they make some sort of deal of like, okay, maybe we'll put in robots over time, or not 100% robots, because and you could do this at Amazon or any number of companies, right? You could actually start to do it now, but politically speaking, and just from a human standpoint, it's not great to just start suddenly replace everyone. You got just too much turmoil, and you just lay everyone off. And from a sort of Trumpy standpoint, he just looks at the bottom line and, hey, just put money in my pocket. But this is something that politicians could regulate. You could say, okay, just for example, Elon Musk, from his point of view, he wants robot taxis everywhere, right? Just from his point of view. But like from a political standpoint, if you just tell everyone, okay, all your taxi jobs and all your driving jobs, all your UPS jobs, all your post office jobs, FedEx, all your delivery jobs, any number of things, like they're all gone, right, today. And, from a political standpoint, you'd be like, hey, I'm fighting for workers. We're not going to allow robot drivers, right? And then I'm just giving you different examples where industries can really push back and say, no robots in hospitals, no robots, blah, 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 right? So this is something that I think is important, right? Here's another one. Shield teenagers from harms caused by chatbots. And there's been lawsuits already out there to where and I can't say the word on YouTube, but you'll know when a teenager essentially forms a relationship with a robot and then starts asking questions on how to, end. I'll just put it that way. And if the chatbot, gives any directions or anything like that, a person can do said things. That's just one example, but there's lots of examples out there to where, kids and teens are vulnerable to this kind of stuff, right? Serious stuff. And there's any number of other examples you could use that, the robot may give things that, teens shouldn't be doing. Let's put it that way. Or another one, curb spikes and utility bills linked to energy guzzling data centers that power AI technology, right? Regular people don't want to have to pay higher rates to these data centers, which is perfectly reasonable. So there's any number of ways you could regulate these things. And again, remember, Trump wants deregulation because he's in bed with the tech bros and whatever foreign countries and foreign companies that want to also build this stuff as well. And this is actually really an interesting thing with the AI. Another reason why you could argue Trump wants this stuff is because, well, Trump's not that smart, but we'll say people around Trump could want this stuff is because it pumps up the GDP numbers. That's basically what it ends up being. And there's this really interesting chart here from Barclays, which shows this. So for example, in 2025, you could argue in some of these quarters that it pumps up GDP by about a percentage point, which is pretty significant when you're saying, hey, the US GDP is only growing by say 2%, right? So you could argue half of our GDP numbers is based on AI. And so it's like all smoke and mirrors. I've told you guys this stuff several times on the channel. Yes, there's economic activity, but it's all investing into these data centers. And all this investment is based on debt. And then when you look at like what Trump is up to these days, and this also relates, right? They're trying to negotiate something to end the war in Ukraine. But basically what it boils down to is Russia and Trump. There are people meeting in Miami and they're looking at, okay, how can we divide up Ukraine? And how can we get those rare earth minerals? Because my tech bros want these materials so we can make, more chips and more AI stuff and robots and cars and stuff like that, which I get it, right? You need the stuff to do that. But that's the whole point, though, is that Trump's trying to basically seize the stuff that he needs to put money in his pocket so the people that want this materials can make that. That's what it ends up being. And, Trump, he'll start saying, like, make these weird statements. He'll be like, Trump rants, quote, nobody knows what magnets are, right? And it's just going on about magnet this, magnet that. And you'll see Trump make these bizarre statements. But the point, though, is that from his point of view, he's hanging out with a bunch of tech bros. He barely understands any of this stuff at all. What he does understand, though, is money in his bank account. He's not that dumb. He gets that part of it. And so he'll just go along with whatever his handlers tell him, and he'll sign whatever. And it's like, okay, Trump, you're going to be really rich if he signs. Oh, okay, I'll do that, right? And then he does that. And so a lot of this stuff is what we're fighting over is like who controls the resources to produce all of these AI data centers. And he wants, him and his people want to deregulate as much as we can so we can get more data centers. This is an interesting one that also came out today. There's a bunch of AI news, which I got to go over with you guys. Flood of AI bonds adds pressure on the markets. Basically, all this stuff is based on debt. Long story short, all this stuff is based on debt. The whole goal of these companies then is, okay, how can I borrow a bunch of money to build this thing in a promise that it's going to make a bunch of money later? And as I told you guys, there may not be a situation to where the customers don't show up, right? There's not enough subscribers to pay for your data center, or the other one is there's not enough energy to pay for your data center, or you just frankly run out of money. And this is interesting because like I showed you guys this chart before, but the data center boom is just skyrocketing in terms of like how much these things are building, and the way they're doing the counting on some of these things is a little bit fuzzy. I didn't know about this one. I mean, there's new stuff being revealed every day, and it's been a lot of how can I say, like exposing information coming out recently on this stuff. As you guys know, Michael Burry placed a big short bet, meaning basically he's betting against all this data center, calling it basically a big bubble, the same way he saw with the housing market. And the more you dig into stuff, it really feels like that. So let me explain this one. This is a Meta, actually, Facebook, and it says AI meets aggressive accounting at Meta's gigantic new data center. Okay, so what is this aggressive accounting? Long story short is if they figure out a way to have the data center not on their books, and they want to just keep sort of borrowing the money. That's basically what it boils down to. Let me explain this stuff and we'll read through it together. It says, it seems like a marvel of financial engineering, talking about Meta, is building a $27 billion data center in Louisiana, okay? Financed with debt, and neither the data center nor the debt will be on its balance sheet. So they're throwing together these sort of, what's the word to say, deals with multiple players in it, and they're doing it in a way that, you can borrow money, but don't hurt your credit, so you can keep borrowing more. And then also you're structuring the thing to where like you may not necessarily own it, but you'll lease it kind of thing. But you're the one who's putting the thing together. It's like, it's all kind of shady the way they have to do this. And even the Wall Street Journal is calling it out. The outlook looks too good to be true. It probably is, right? Indeed, it is a quintessential structured finance, okay? The point of which is to help companies try to achieve seemingly irreconcilable financial reporting goals. Meta wants other people's money, okay? Meta wants other people's money to pay for the data center. Those investors want to know Meta ultimately has their backs, but at the same time, Meta wants to keep its near pristine credit rating and doesn't want the extra assets and debts on the books. And then they just go through the whole rigmarole of how you structure said thing. It's pretty ridiculous. And it's interesting because there's another theme in this stuff to where everyone wants to make money on this stuff, but no one wants to take responsibility for it. That's what it boils down to. Because look at this. Insurers retreat from AI cover as risk of multi-billion-dollar claims mount. Okay, long story short, they don't want to insure it. That's basically what it ends up being. So like what if, AI puts out like a false story. So just for example, you search something on Google, and Google will AI results will say, oh, there's this, major lawsuit against this company, or this company's products don't work or whatever. And it turns out like the answer that the AI gave out is completely wrong, right? Like who's liable for that? Or for example, and then I think there's actually a company suing Google at the moment for something of that nature. Or for example, if you have like an AI chatbot at your company and it gives a coupon code at the airline or whatever, and the coupon code says, oh, okay, you're supposed to get 10% off, type it in, and then it works or doesn't work either way. There's something up with the system, and then that goes out to like 10,000 people or whatever. Like the insurance companies, they're used to dealing with, say, one faulty thing, one faulty, company, one faulty issue. But these things can spread so quickly. It's like, I think the way to describe it is, imagine if there was like a meme photo, for example, and it turned out to be completely false, but a bunch of people believed something and took some sort of action on whatever meme fake photo. And I think that's going to be a real possibility in the future where we're going to have those kind of incidents. There's going to be like a few situations that just like completely blow up the bubble. It's basically what it boils down to. I'll give you one scenario, which I think is a very real possibility. China. What does China have to do with this? They just announced this today. It says Alibaba's main AI app debuts strongly in effort to rival ChatGPT. Long story short, I think China's going to come in a lot cheaper and theoretically better than the American counterparts. We heard about this with DeepSeek. That was early this year. I talked about that with you guys. What if they can come up with cheaper chips, more energy efficient? They got a larger population over there, right? What if they can get all the people hooked on whatever they're doing? It said here, I guess this new app they put out, Alibaba's group holding a limited QN app drew more than 10 million downloads in the week after its relaunch. So, it's relatively small. 10 million is still a lot. Don't want to downplay that, but you still want to get to the 100 million mark as fast as you can. But they got enough people over there. And the other thing is too, is this something that Elon Musk is aware of because he has business in China. He's got a big factory there and stuff like that. And something that Musk talks about all the time is in China, they have super apps. It's not just China. You could argue we have this here in Korea, all throughout Asia. And I can't speak to Europe. Basically what it is if you have monopoly laws different, meaning that you can just have monopolies, then you can integrate more into your app. So, in China, you can have like one app can be your bank, can be your delivery, can be your mail, right? Can be your email, can be your shopping, can be any number of things like all rolled into one. It can be real estate, any number of things, stock trading, et cetera, all into one. And so then that makes that app really, really popular. That's something that Elon Musk wants to do, but antitrust laws, or basically monopoly laws, keep Musk from doing that kind of thing. And that's why Musk would be hanging out with Trump. It's like, hey, can you loosen up the regulations so I can compete with China? And that's why when Trump says, hey, we got to compete with China, that would be one example, but that's not necessarily something that we want to do in USA, is just give, too much power to one company. Now, obviously, Microsoft or Google or Amazon or whatever, those kind of companies would want that. They'd be like, hey, in Amazon's situation, what if I can effectively have my own Netflix, which is like, their media thing, because Amazon actually makes movies these days. And then what if I can get into banking, right? And make cars, right? Like put all this stuff into one. So there's a reasons why you want to keep this stuff separate and sort of an advantage of the American system doing that. But I get the tech bros point of view as if you eliminate competition and streamline everything and we can make one great app and, beat out China. But I wouldn't necessarily say, your goal in life should be to be like China. And that's essentially what many of the tech bros are pushing for, like in Elon Musk, which is really quite interesting. And then you got this, which is really, it blew my mind today. I know there's a lot of AI news, but this was the headline. Amazon data center tallies tops 900 amid AI frenzy document shows. It turns out they got way more data centers than anyone knew. And they don't disclose like where all of them are. It's for, proprietary reasons, which I completely understand. You want to tell your competitors, it's like, hey, we have to have data centers here, 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 and this is how we get our data moving fast and stuff like that. And then it mentioned too, it's not just the data centers. They use this word. For those of you in the industry, I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on this, because this was new to me. I don't know everything, and I'll just tell you what it is. It says called colos, okay? These are co-location facilities. So you have like your data center, and then you can rent parts of other buildings. So I'll just describe, we'll read it here together. Amazon Web Services is best known for sprawling data centers in Virginia and Oregon, okay? So that part I did know. But those sorts of enormous complexes which company owns or operates through long-term leases don't account for its full footprint, right? The cloud unit also stashes server racks in hundreds of so-called co-location facilities, or co-location facilities. So I want to hear from you guys if you're familiar with this stuff. Renting space that is of last year provide about a fifth of the computer power at Amazon's disposal, according to the documents. And the reason why you're bringing up this stuff is because it's just the nature of how big this stuff is getting. It's not just data centers, it's also these co-location centers, colos, what they're called, are everywhere. And this actually provided a chart of like how big this data center thing is going. And the reason I keep mentioning the debt stuff, because that's what ultimately blows this stuff up. If they had, let's just say in a fantasy world, they had all cash, they built the stuff all for cash, right? You build it and then people start renting on it and eventually you recoup back your capital, right? But if I'm borrowing a bunch of money on said things and I'm not even profitable on this stuff and I just keep borrowing, eventually, right, it doesn't work anymore if the money doesn't actually pay off and then you owe a bunch of money. That's where the real danger is. And everyone's doing it because everyone's doing it, you feel like you have to do it too. And so that's why I was saying, like, there's going to be something that really pushes back against this stuff. And it could be any number of things. I mentioned the China thing before, or, there's an incident where, someone really gets hurt by one of these chatbots, and it becomes a big news story and people start like, whoa, we got to pull back. Or they're just, massive layoffs at whatever company. I don't know. I don't know what's going to be. I can't predict exactly what that, key event's going to be, where I was going to get pissed off at the data centers, but you can see it coming a mile away. I mean, just the money's not going to be there, and you can't borrow to infinity, and there's no such thing as infinite growth. It's not going to happen. And then on top of that, you're, right now led by, Trumpers, who's very little concern about regular people at all and has no connection to regular people. So that's why you got to show stuff like this, to where when Trump's tweeting out, oh yeah, your Thanksgiving is, whatever, going to be cheap. He's talking about gas prices are all going to be cheap or whatever. And then people even call him out on that. And they do it all the time where dude, you're wrong. And it's just like, it's all a joke, right? And it's frustrating because, I just try to talk like a regular person, just honestly, just a regular person. Like, this is how, regular people's lives are affected. And for us to really move forward as society, we all got to be on the same page as reality. And I think some of the manga people are getting there. I mean, you can see it here where Trump poll numbers are sinking. And some of these people, like, I'll just say like DeSantis, I don't like DeSantis, but he's not stupid. He's not stupid by any means. He's a smart guy. And he's smart enough to say, okay, I don't have to follow Trump down that road. I don't need to go that way. And like, maybe my voters, actually want to have jobs, which I think any politician out there, like, that's what you probably should be thinking about, is like, okay, make sure that my constituency has jobs. And if you're, following some guy who's like, hey guys, let's get automation AI everywhere. I mean, politically speaking, that is a dead end. I'm telling you, and any Republican watching, I'm telling you guys, that's a dead end. Yeah, it can pump up your GDP numbers, right, artificially in a way, but it's just completely unsustainable. So it doesn't mean that we're never going to have AI. It doesn't mean we're not going to use this technology, but the overinvestment on borrowing, I think that's where it's real bad shape. So that's my thoughts on this stuff. I'd like to hear yours, and I'll catch you on the next video.